Okay, this is the tutorial for the red balloon activity. I'm going to be running through everything from downloading from Flickr to saving it onto your computer locally, and then working in Photoshop to edit this photograph. So what you have here is a photograph of a red balloon, and this one is an interesting composition. And then what you see down here is kind of a similar photo in terms of the content. We've got a balloon as our sort of emphasis piece, but they've turned it monochrome. They've kept the red, and then they've black and white monochrome the rest of it. Okay, and that's what we're going to learn how to do today. Okay, so let's go grab an image. I found an image online. This is not my image. This is from a Fahim Faisal Khan Shapnil. I've borrowed an image for him, so thank you for that. I have put it on my own Flickr account for now, just so that it would appear the same as your image. You're going to be using your own images for this. And so when you have rights to your own images, when you click on this download, you'll be given the optional sizes. You're going to download the original size. So I'm going to click on this. It's going to open up in my Finder. So I'm going to click on this and say show in Finder, and it'll save in my downloads. Okay, if you don't see a downloads folder here, you should, but if you don't, just click on go and you'll be able to get it out of this list, downloads, right there. Okay, alright, so there's downloads, there's my image. I'm going to rename this just to make it a little easier to work with, and I'm going to call it balloon. Okay, there's our image. Okay, alright, now I'm going to go over to Photoshop here, and I'm going to go File, Open. I'm going to go grab from my downloads this balloon image. It's going to open up in Photoshop. Now I'm viewing this at 100%. Okay, depending on how large your image is, you may be zoomed in or zoomed out. If you've got a really large image, Photoshop will automatically zoom it out for you so that it'll fit in your screen. And what you can see here, this 66.7 means I'm viewing it at a smaller size than the original. If I want to view it at 100%, I've got to double click here, or alternatively I can say view 100% or command 1. Okay, we'll set it to 100%. Alright, this is my image, and I'm going to be working with this, so let's take a look at what we need to do. I need to basically isolate this red balloon from the rest of the image. I want to tell Photoshop that I'm interested in this part of the balloon. Now if you have no background in Photoshop, which maybe many of you will have no background in Photoshop, let's first start by setting our interface. I'll do a quick run around this interface to see what's here. This Photoshop layout it's kind of a good one to work with. It has all the kind of basic tools and what are called palettes. These guys here are called palettes. Okay, and by default they will set up in the same place. If I go here, up in the top right corner, I've got this Essentials drop down. Okay, I can also get this by going Window, Workspace, Essentials, and you'll see there's a bunch of other presets here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens if I change it. You'll notice that it changes the palettes that show up depending on what I'm trying to do. Because there's so much you can do with Photoshop, each of the layouts will differ depending on what thing you're trying to do. Well, we're going to go with this one, like I said, Essentials. Okay, and then we're going to reset that workspace, reset Essentials, so that your workspace looks the same as my workspace. Okay, so that all the palettes are in the same position, because you can also maximize them and minimize them, and you can actually move them around depending on what you want to do. And as you get better with Photoshop, you might do that, but because you're going to be trying to follow along with me, I want it to look the same on your computer as mine. So what we'll do is we'll reset it, and you'll see that all those go back to their original positions. So once you've done that, your interface should look the same as mine, except that it'll be your balloons, not my balloons, or your photos, not my photos. Alright, let's take a look at what we have to do here. I want to isolate this red balloon. And so to do that, along the side here we've got a bunch of tools. Now we have, some of you may know this from ComTech classes or just dabbling in Photoshop, but if you don't, what I want to do is I want to do something called selecting. Now if you just start clicking, each of these tools does something different. It's going to do some weird things. We don't want to just randomly start clicking. So let's be careful about what we're doing here. We're going to go to the magic wand tool. which is 1, 2, 3, 4 down from the top. Okay, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click in this red area here. Okay, and what's it going to do is it's going to select a color, and what you'll notice is it selects pretty close to all of that red. If I click here in the yellow, it'll select all of the yellow, which is quite good. If I select here, it's going to select all the connected colors that are close to this dark black hair here. Now, your setup might have a different what's called tolerance. So what you can see here, I'm going to deselect this by going select and deselect. Tolerance means how close to the color I have clicked on should that selection include. So I'm going to set it really low. I'm going to set it at 8 and then click in this red. And what you'll see is it selects only the closest red. You can see this is a gradient. It goes from like a light red down to a darker red. And if I click, it's going to select sort of the closest 8 reds to that color. If I double that, if I make that 16, and again I click in here, it's going to make a larger selection because it's selecting like the closest 16 sort of colors to that. If I double that again up to 32, it's going to do a better job of getting more of those reds. And if I go to 64, it gets almost all of the reds. So that works quite well depending on where I click, right? What I want to do is get all of this. Now I could probably bump this up to say 128. That might be too much. Let's see. No, that's actually quite good. That gets everything. So in this instance, this photograph works quite well because there's so much contrast between these two colors. Yours may or may not be as simple as that. And if it's not, I'm going to assume it's not. Let's look at what we might do. So I'm going to bump this down to 32 again. Okay, and I'm going to deselect, deselect, and I'm going to select here. And let's say that that's the closest you can get because of the way your photo was taken. Well, what do we do now? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to tell Photoshop that I'm interested in more than just this. Because right now, just so you can see what I'm doing, I've selected this area. And if I go to move it, you'll see it's moving that part of the image, right? If I wanted to add an effect, it would only add it to this portion of the image. If I said I wanted to make this, I don't know, if I went image adjustments and I wanted to bump up the saturation, it's only going to change the saturation in that selected area. Now that's not what I want. I want all of this red. So I need to add to my selection. There's a couple ways to do that. One of the simpler ways is to use this magic wand and hold the shift key and just add to my selection. And you can see what happens is it adds more to my original selection. That might work for you. It might not. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to show you the most accurate way to do this. So make my selection. It gives me sort of an initial selection like this. And I'm going to do something called Quick Mask. Now the way Quick Mask works is I mentioned that this is a selection, and I've told Photoshop I'm interested in this area alone. I can tell Photoshop, right now we know that this selection is defined by these little white and black kind of dotted lines. I know what's selected by that. There's another way to do this. I'm gonna change it so that I can visually see what is selected. So to do that, I'm going to use yellow just because it's a little tricky to do with red. I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to select this yellow and I'm going to purposely choose a smaller number. Okay, so I've got that yellow selected right now, and I want to add the rest of this yellow here. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter something called Quick Mask Mode, which is here. Okay, if I click on this button here, what's going to happen is it's going to show me the selected area as its original color, and the rest of the image is going to be turned red. So I click on this. Notice that it's showing me my selection, which is this yellow part, as yellow, and everything else has got a red overlay on it. If I turn that back off, you can see that's where my selection is. Right now, what I want to do is I want to add to my selection. So I'm going to turn this on, and by drawing with a brush, so you can see here I've got a brush tool. Okay, there's a pencil and a brush tool. I want this one here. Okay, and with drawing with a brush, I'm going to bring my brush size down to about 30 pixels. Alright, now what I can do is I can draw in here, and you can see while I'm drawing with white, it is removing some of that red overlay. If I draw in black, notice if I click this little arrow here, it'll switch colors. If I draw in black, it's going to add to that red overlay. Okay, now it is a bit confusing. It's going to take you a bit of time to sort of wrap your head around what's happening. But essentially what's happening is I'm changing my selection. So watch what happens when I leave quick edit mode. Notice that it has now added more to my selection. If I go back to quick edit and I draw in black and I get rid of all this, watch what happens to my selection. Okay, I've changed my selection according to the where I drew. Right, so I'm drawing here in with my brush tool. If I draw in white, okay, I'm going to add to this, and now my selection is going to be this. Right, that's great, that's fine, but I want red. Now there's a couple things we need. I'm trying to select this red balloon, so there's a couple things I need to do. So first of all, I'm going to select and deselect what I've got here, okay, and I'm going to select this red, okay, and that's okay, that's fine. I can add to that by holding Shift and adding to my selection. The problem is when I click this quick mask, it puts a red overlay, and when I'm working in red, that becomes a problem because I can't really tell anymore. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to exit quick mask, and I'm going to double click this button. And what's going to happen is it's going to say what color do you want to use instead. So I'm going to choose something that's going to be high contrast compared to that red. And now what I can see is that's a bit better. I can see where that green is overlaying that red. So now remember that the green overlay is just showing you what's not selected, right? So it's a little bit kind of tricky to get your head around. I'm going to draw in white, okay? And now what I want to do is I just want to fill in and basically reveal the red in this balloon. Now let's say I go too far. Say I went, oh, I've gone too far and I've revealed a bunch of this. Well, I can just flip my color to black and then draw here, right? And it's going to change my selection. Let's exit selection mode. Okay, so you can see now my selection is this. Looks like I've missed a bit there, so I'll go back to this mode and I'll draw in white. Okay, now when I exit, alright, so now I've got a bit of a rough selection here. Not very good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bump my brush size up. Okay, so I'm going to go up to, let's see, maybe bigger than that. That might work. I'm also going to make sure that my hardness, this is the edge, so notice that these are 100% hard edged and these are 0% hard edged. They're really kind of soft and blurry. I want a hard edge like this. So I'm going to make sure that this slider is at 100 and this brush, depending on the size of your balloon, can be about this big. So, you know, whatever, a little smaller than your balloon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Quick Mask and I'm going to use the rounded edge of this balloon, sorry, of this brush to create. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make it a little easier. So magnifying glass here. Okay. And now with my brush, I'm just going to use the rounded edge of this brush to approximate as closely as I can the edge of my balloon. Now the reason that we're doing this with the balloon is because balloons are round and they're easy to work with. So this is a nice kind of introduction. Now this is not going to work. I'm going to have to bring my brush size down. Otherwise I'm going to cut off part of it. So a bit of a smaller brush here, okay, into this corner. Okay, and then again I'm going to bump it back up. It's about 170, 170. Okay, and that should work. I'm going to go in here and add in my detail as close as I can. Now say you go too far and I'm not being very careful and I did this. Oh, that's no good. I've gone too far. In fact, I've gone way too far. I can just flip this back to black and draw this back in and try it again. I can do that as many times as I need to until I get it right. Okay, so now that looks pretty good to me. I think that's pretty close to what I need. I'm going to bump this right down to a really small one because I want to maybe even smaller than that. I'm going to go like 4 or 5. And I'm just going to bring the color in for this part of the balloon. Alright, I'm going to double click this magnifying glass, 1, 2, puts me back out to 100%, and I'm going to exit Quick Mask by clicking on the little Quick Mask button. And you'll see that now my selection is exactly this balloon. Great. So what that means is I've told Photoshop I'm interested in this balloon. Now what I want to do is I want to keep the color for the balloon and make everything else black and white. So to do that, I need to say I'm interested in the opposite. I don't want to change this. I want to change everything else. So I'm going to go Select, Inverse, and you'll see that this shows up around the edges. There's this dotted line because now my selection is everything except the red part. Okay, it's all of this here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add an effect. Okay, it's called a adjustment layer. Okay, and that's by going down here to the bottom of your layer palette. Click on this guy and then scroll down to where it says black and white. And when I click on black and white, it's going to apply this adjustment layer to the part of the image that I have selected. Right now I've selected everything except the red balloon. So I click on this and it black and whites everything else, leaving this red balloon here. Now I may, for this image, I feel like I should probably bring this color in as well. So maybe I go back and I'm going to go in my history here. There's a little history palette here. I'm going to go back a couple of steps to right to here. And I'm going to actually add in a bit more here. So I'm going to go to my brush and I'm going to bring that up to 170. And I'm going to zoom in. Anytime you make a mistake, you can just undo, Command Z, or edit, undo, or you can go to this history palette here and go back a bunch of steps in a row if needed. I'm going to go right in here and bring this brush down just a little bit for this part. Okay, that looks alright. I might bring it up just a bit just to get that curve right. That looks pretty good. Great. The more time you spend doing this, the better it's going to look. Alright, 100%. Exit quick mask. And now I'm going to go invert. So select, invert. Okay, I'm going to add my black and white filter, leaving these colorful and the rest black and white. Okay, once you're done with that, you're just going to file, save as. You're going to save it as a JPEG. Okay, from the drop down. Give it a new name. So I'm going to call it black and white -BW for black and white. I hit OK. And then you can upload this back to Flickr. Head back to Flickr and upload your black and white edited image. Done. Upload one photo and you're good to go. If you have any questions, you can ask Mr. St.Romain or Ms. Antonetti to review any of this or rewatch the video. Okay? Have a great day.